Hello, welcome. Just a few weeks ago, I published a video on the channel with the latest generation Audi Q5, and the video was titled Audi Q5 with a diesel, because with what else? Referring to a meme, because for many people, the Audi Q5 has to have a diesel engine, and today Christian will tell you why it doesn't have to be that way at all. Enjoy the video. Music.
Hi, my name is Christian. I live in a small town near Puławy, and I'm originally from Rzeszów. Today I'm going to show you my car, which is a second generation Audi Q5 pre-facelift version from 2018. It's a 2-liter TFSI gasoline engine with 252 horsepower. I used to drive the previous generation Q5, and now I've decided to go for it again, only 10 years newer. Previously I drove a diesel. It wasn't too problematic. But because of that, I knew what the engines produced 10 years later are like. They're very complicated. So I decided to go with a plain 2-liter TFSI gasoline engine. I check Autocentrum and Zakharov, and I see that people are getting average fuel consumption of around 8 to 9 liters in mixed driving. I thought to myself, with that kind of performance, it sounds great to me. It turned out there was such a car available in Rzeszów. It just so happened that on the same day I sold my previous Q5, and right away I was on my way to see this particular car. I also had the chance to meet a very nice gentleman, the owner from Przemysl. He makes bells because I had to go to him to pick up a second set of wheels with winter tires. My first question was if the car had been in an accident, but it was only used to transport bells. He also said that he brought this particular car from Germany for himself, and that it was hard for him to part with it. Because he knew this particular car, he knew how it had been serviced. Generally the car is stock, although it's the S-Line trim, but only the exterior package adds those sporty bumpers, side skirts, rear bumper and rear spoiler. I really like the stock look of this version because of the 20-inch wheels and the air suspension, so since there's nothing special on the outside, maybe let's take a look under the hood. The basic gasoline engine here is the 2.0 TFSI, and the exact engine code here is DAX-B. It's paired with the Astronic D382 gearbox. The power generated by this engine is 252 horsepower and 370 Nm of torque available from 1600 RPM. Generally, nobody really tinkered with anything here, although I knew what I had to do. Specifically, I had to do something with the gearbox and modify its stock software. Basically, this engine gets killed, it destroys the flywheel, because the revs drop quite low. That's why there are now many tuners on the market who fix this issue. Such a modification will extend the reliability of this unit and also makes driving much more fun. Of course, you can also modify the engine control unit. However, I think that in this case, when it comes to a standard civilian car for the family, there's no need for that, because the performance is more than enough. When it comes to acceleration from 0 to 100 in a sprint with launch control, the official figure here is 6.2 seconds to 100. After modifying the gearbox, I managed to measure in good weather and on 98 octane fuel, because the ignition retards are always smaller, a time of 5.6 seconds. Of course, we can go further by modifying the engine controller and slightly improving the exhaust flow. You can get over 300 horsepower from this, which is already near the limit. 500 Nm, which in the sprint to 100 allows us to go below the magic. 5 seconds, which is impressive in the light SUV class. I think it's great. As I mentioned earlier, checking with Zakhar on Autocentrum, people are getting results around 8.9. I commute about 20 kilometers to work every day. You can get 7.5 in non-city driving, and if you push it a bit, it'll be around 8.9. On expressways or highways with dynamic driving, it's 10-11, and I think it'll be similar in the city. The current mileage of the car is 150,000 kilometers. I bought it when it had 135,000 kilometers, and it just so happened that I did 15,000 kilometers per year, mostly outside the city, considering my annual mileage. That's also why I decided on the gasoline version. It's less problematic and doesn't hit your wallet as hard when it comes to fuel costs.
Attention, here's an interesting fact about the BMW 5 Series. A dream car for many, but on the used market, it's an infamous record holder. Do you know what percentage of VIN reports in AutoDNA for this model included recorded damages last year? Of these, 20%, 50%, over 76% of BMW 5 Series reports were for damaged cars. In second place is also a BMW, the 3 Series, with a result of over 70%. This isn't an opinion. These are data from the Auto DNA report, which summarizes the 25th year on the used car market. There's also a map of Poland divided into 3 parts. But these aren't partitions. In the east, it's Audi A4, in the west, it's Volkswagen Golf, and in the middle, it's Opel Astra. These are the most commonly imported cars. Such a clear division, right? The link to the car is in the description, but it's worth visiting their website not just for these interesting facts, but above all for reliable information. Before buying a car, check the VIN at AutoDNA and avoid a car that's been in an accident or has a tampered odometer. The link is in the description. Check it out here.
We already have the third generation 2.0 TFSI engine. It no longer consumes oil, there aren't any major failures, and I think most of the issues are due to improper use. Subscribe, and I'll see you in future episodes. Too infrequent oil changes, mainly because here we have a timing chain that's lubricated by oil, so if we change the oil after 3000, it's obvious what will happen to it. Because I thoroughly checked the service history first. The oil was changed every 15,000 at most, and in this particular model I stick to an interval of 8 to 10,000 at most. And I think that's why this engine lasts a long time. With trouble-free driving, but to complete the picture, the first post-purchase service, like here, is at 120,000, 130,000, 150,000 at most. You need to replace the right parts. You need to know what to replace to enjoy long, trouble-free driving. In this case, I think parts like spark plugs and especially the crankcase breather should be replaced. Alternatively, check the injector's operating parameters or fuel pressure to ensure everything is within specified values. This way, we can assess the condition of this unit. I stick to this approach very strictly, and thanks to that, I enjoy trouble-free driving. The only thing is that the program for the mileage correction was done just now during my time, so over the last 6 years, the dual mass flywheel needs to be replaced because it's already quite worn out. As for the interior, I think you can feel that it's from the German market. The car is quite well equipped. I really like the combination of classic and modern in this car. A subtle screen, the MMI control system is very convenient, and we also have a digital instrument cluster, which I think are very clear. Here, I should add that these are from the SQ5 version because you can basically modify this yourself if you do a bit of searching on the internet. When it comes to equipment, we have something here. What I liked the most was the adaptive cruise control with radar, 3-zone climate control, auto-dimming mirrors that make driving at night much easier, no more blinding lights. There are a lot of driver assistance features. I think the most useful feature is the emergency braking assistant when reversing out of a perpendicular parking spot. The car also monitors the surroundings at the back and can detect even a cyclist or another car and brake automatically in an emergency. There aren't many car listings with air suspension. And I was really determined to get it because I'm a fan of subtle tuning. In my opinion, what matters is the wheel, meaning a bigger rim and a slightly lower suspension. With the stock air suspension, we're already 25mm lower right from the start. On top of that, in dynamic mode, the car lowers by another 15mm, so compared to stock, that's already 4cm, which already looks much more aesthetic for an SUV. Of course, one aspect of air suspension is the appearance, but the other is also comfort. I'll be honest, driving over speed bumps in this car is very pleasant, kind of like the feeling of being on a boat. I was also looking for seats with an extendable thigh support. They're not marked with the S-Line badge, but basically they're no different except for that logo. I really like it when the seat supports me here and supports my thighs. They are electrically adjustable, and interestingly, which is rare, we have both heating and ventilation here, and you can use both at the same time.
And look, above my head there's about 5 finger widths of space, really, and both visually and actually there's plenty of room. I didn't have to adjust anything in relation to the steering wheel. I'm sitting perfectly, and the steering wheel here adjusts manually. Look at the range we can adjust. In German cars it's pretty good and consistent, and in the back I'd say it's a tight fit, meaning there's much less space, but still 2 fingers of free space. There's nothing to complain about. I'm not short on knee room either, because here there are these knee recesses, and for the first time in many cars, my knees actually fit into these recesses. And they're not way too high, so again, that's a plus. Under the seat, even though the seat is lowered, there's plenty of space. So basically, the only thing I can complain about is that there's a hard shell on the back of the driver's seat. And in these recesses, my knees are exactly in contact with that shell, and it's not very comfortable. And that's basically the only reason to complain.
As for the trunk, I think it's quite spacious here. Exactly, if I remember correctly, it's 520 liters, and the space can be expanded up to 1,520 liters. If you fold the rear backrest down, the backrest angle is adjustable, and the bench slides too, which is another advantage. Of course, there's also a pass-through for curtain rods.
I've always said it was for skis.
But not for curtain rods, that's not true. Here, in the pneumatic version for easier loading, we also have the option to lower the suspension, so it's easier to load heavier items.
Is it for people who are 2 meters tall and those above 1.85 meters?
Because here, with me being just under 1.90 meters, I don't fit and I hit the trunk lid. Everything fits here for a 3-person family in my opinion, or even a 4-person family with 2 kids. I think we can easily pack everything here for a vacation trip. Alternatively, you can leave the cargo cover at home, because there's no designated space for it under the floor.
Now it's time for the test drive. And once again, as I sit in the driver's seat, I try to lower the seat in disbelief. There was so much space under the seat in the back that I kept trying to push it lower, thinking it couldn't be possible, but it actually is. Indeed, it's set so that I'm low enough and there's literally enough space under me for a ski boot. Well, let's get all the praise for Matika out of the way right away.
Currently we're in dynamic mode, so it's as stiff as possible, let's say, as standard.
And at this moment, when driving out of, let's say, an unpaved section under the overpass, you can immediately feel that you don't have to experience every bump because everything is smoothly evened out. Matika is truly a brilliant invention. Let's see how this affects the test in dynamic mode. We'll do the moose test soon. For now, let's drive as it is. Right after we finished recording with the hood, the technical part was behind us. They said, oh, I'd still like to add something. Sure, there will be an opportunity during the driving impressions. So what else is interesting?
We have 4 cylinders here, but 8 injectors. Basically, there's both direct and indirect injection here. The manufacturer designed it this way to prevent carbon buildup on the cylinders. That's why there are injectors in the intake manifold. So the car uses 2 types of fuel injection. Interestingly, if one system fails, the car can automatically switch to the other and keep running normally.
The diesel version, which is very popular in Poland, is also often tied to the car's equipment spec. Either in a fleet package that's not very luxuriously finished, or one that went to a private owner who, let's say, had a certain budget but probably didn't check all the options, right? But there really aren't many of those truly well-equipped versions, and paradoxically the gasoline engine actually helps with that, because that means the car was most likely bought by a very well-informed owner, not just someone who bought what everyone else was buying. He knows what he wants and may have selected more options, since that's when you buy them. Not for driving long distances, but for enjoying the smoother, trouble-free engine performance and also the sound. And then when we buy a car for pleasure, there are more nice extras to go with it as well.
You can mention what's missing and what's actually nice. If someone drives at night, there are no matrix lights, just classic LEDs, but they work really well. There are no 360 camera system, no panoramic roof. I consider that an advantage. I had them in my previous car. Here we have an acoustic front windshield and laminated side windows, which I think we'll check in a moment on a longer trip at higher speeds. I think it does the job. It's really quiet. You can hear the engine, but at lower revs, up to a few thousand, you basically can't hear it at all. When driving like this, the only thing...
What I hear is basically the tires, The tires rolling underneath, there's no wind noise at all, and the engine only wakes up when you call for it.
The mirrors are huge, but you can't hear that nonsense.
You can't even hear that. Before the test drive, Christian told me, just to be clear, I'm not selling this car, it's not for sale. I didn't come here to advertise. It's more for the memories, but the longer I drive, with every kilometer, I totally understand why you're not selling. Because simply everything.
You have all you need, nothing more is necessary.
And besides, there's also something to remember if we're treating this video as a keepsake.
I'm more of a long-distance car owner. I kept my last one for 4 years. I don't change cars like socks every year or every 6 months. I'll probably drive them longer, especially since I really like to take care of them. So when it comes to cars, if I put some money into servicing them, it's obvious I won't get that back. That's just a natural process.
Is there a stronger brake here? Is this for real?
I think here it's a bit bigger. First, because the owner changed the disc to Zimmerman's. The diameter is probably 338.
Also, I wanted to do it while there's a 2-meter stick here, but I forgot. This car is quite an interesting mix because on one hand the equipment is definitely premium, the driving quality is definitely premium, and I don't know, maybe it's because this is the base engine, maybe.
Być może.
The interior isn't finished in a particularly premium way. I mean, this material barely gives under your finger. It's like, let's say, it goes down a millimeter and that's it. It's not exactly concrete, but here it's already hard. There's the steering wheel, and I wouldn't say it's much better here, but it's adjustable. You can raise it, pull it out, so that's nice. But if you start pulling things here and there, even basic things like the door handle,
It creaks quite a lot.
we could make this move at 180 kilometers per hour, and there was no need to turn up the volume because it just creaked that loudly. Because it will be picked up by the microphones anyway, so it's a disaster. And it's strange when Audi already has learned and reached perfection when it comes to ergonomics. Something started to go wrong here. Yes, something is missing here. Well, since there were already some compliments, there was also some complaining. Let's check if the last thing we have to do, which is the moose test, will be a compliment or not. And we'll see that on the gauges. We have dynamic mode. Grip 10, empty road. All right, light.
You could feel the rear sliding, and there was a bit of squealing.
The tires gave way a little. The tires squealed a little, but they didn't slide. And what was really nice was that, despite everything, they changed the direction of the car immediately, so it wasn't like I turned, and I turned very sharply because the steering system didn't resist and allowed me to do that. So when I turned hard, they didn't keep sliding, but really reacted very quickly and made it possible for me to go where I wanted, just as I intended.
Where I want to.
I thought that's what would happen, that it would end up sideways, but it actually managed to recover from that very deep dive to the left. It recovered, bounced back, we kept going, and basically the only special effect was the squealing. I know.
If you noticed anything on the warning lights, but nothing came on.
Nothing, all clear. The car is good for comfortable traveling and for special maneuvers if needed.
Yes, with a bit of a sporty edge.
Well, congratulations, you've hunted down an excellent specimen. Yes, that's what I believe. In that case, I wish you many more miles of trouble-free driving and enjoyment. And well, thanks to you too, dear viewers, for watching this episode. Remember to subscribe and see you in future episodes. Bye. The end.